Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. Let's do it to it. Question number 247 out of 333 questions in the Catechism on the Constitution of the United States by Arthur J. Stansbury, published 1828. Maybe some of you have noticed that's the year, of course, that Noah Webster published his 1828 dictionary, or as they say in the Wabash Valley, dictionary. Same year, he published a dictionary designed to define all words that he could of the English tongue and the way God uses them in the Bible. That is what it was designed to do. You see, patriots think that dictionary will tell you how words were used in the earlier parts of our history of our country, and they'll use it to define words. No, there's nothing wrong with that, because what you're doing when you do that, you're defining words the way Webster believed the Bible understands those words, the way God would use them. You see, dictionaries are not giving you the definition of words. No. People think that popularly, but that's not what lexicographers are doing when they write dictionaries. They write a dictionary of the English tongue, a dictionary of the use of legal terms like Black's Law Dictionary, Bovier's Law Dictionary. Those are not telling you the definitions of words. No, that's not really what it is. What it is, they're telling you how, from their research, they have discovered words are used. That's the main thing about a dictionary. Now, if you got a dictionary that tells you, well, here's how words were used back in 1828, and by the way, here's the etymology of the word, where it came from and what it really means in its root form, well, that's added icing on the cake, as it were. Black's Dictionary, I believe the 7th edition, I can never remember. One of them is the one that was, the editor was a friend of Justice Scalia, and he goes into the etymology of the words, and in a legal dictionary, you're finding words there. The idea is to show you how the courts use the words, because that's the way it's going to come out if you go to court. They're going to use the words the way the courts before them have used the words, and sometimes courts will define those words, as legislators do. Sometimes legislators will pass a piece of legislation, they'll put right up in front of it, the following words in this legislation mean and refer to the following things. Why do they do that? Because they want to control how it's understood. Never forget, he who defines the words wins. If your definition of the word is used in the argument, you win. Well, what should we do in the midst of all this stepping and fetching about words? People running around, gnashing their teeth, fighting over it. What does is mean? Does is mean is, or does it mean something else? Said Bill Clinton. Well, that's a good question, but he did it to obfuscate, to confuse. He didn't do it to clarify. Now, if you're doing it to clarify, that's a good point. Is. Yeah. Well, it's important we understand that word too, by the way, the more I think about it, a very important word. No, Bill Clinton and his ilk, called the left wing, they are what we call, well, I'm looking for the word. It's a common word, and all of a sudden it's escaped. It flew through my brain, and I didn't have my gun up in time to shoot it down. That's the way it is with birds. If you don't have your gun up when you're bird hunting, you'll miss your opportunity. And I didn't have my gun up to shoot it down. Well, what it means is, that word I'm looking for, somebody will put it in the chat, it means that, oh, cynicism, yeah. Cynicism. That's a Latin word that means to go in circles. Cynic. Cynic. A cynic is somebody who just mocks everything, including words. Well, it could mean this, could mean that, but you say it means this. I don't mean nothing because I say it means that, and mocking about it. Listen, friends, let's end the conflict, end the cynicism. How do you do that? Well, Webster had the right idea when he published that dictionary in 1828. The idea was this: words don't mean what the other fellow means. They don't necessarily mean what you say they mean. Words mean what God says they mean. That's the fact of the matter. And God, in his magnificence, in his mercy, has stooped, as it were, down to our level, as you would stoop down to the level of a little tiny child. I recently stooped down to my grandsons, little toe-headed boys that they are. Don't know beans from sour apple butter about much. A lot of potential, of course, in a young boy's mind. But I stoop down and I get right down on the floor sometimes to look them right in the eye. And I say after me. Yeah, I stoop down. Well, that's what God does when he stoops down and conforms himself to the tongues of men. And he saw fit to stoop down and lisp to us, as it were, baby talk. Simple words in the Bible. The Bible's simple. It's not a book with a lot of heavy-duty complexities. And if you don't want it to be, and if you don't need it to be, it's simple. It's black and white, up and down, in or out, yea or nay, guilty or innocent. Oh yeah, that too. And there's no in between, heaven or hell. There's no in between. There is no purgatory. I want to mention this today, and I'll try to remember to mention it tomorrow, Miss Francine. A lady in the chat last Sunday said, Brent, you're hurting my feelings when you criticize Lutherans. I'm a Lutheran. I grew up Lutheran. And you're hurting my feelings. And as only femininity can do, she said, I'm not vindictive toward you, but I'm going to pray for you in her kindness. And I appreciate that. I want people to pray for me. God knows I need the prayer, as you do too. Miss Francine says she prays for me. I believe her. She never lied to me yet that I know of. We've known each other quite a long time. And I want to make it a point to pray for her. My buddies that I was on the other side of the world with many decades ago, we got together not too long ago, the few of us that were tight. And one of them said, the wildest one of the bunch, among the wildest ones, said, let's all commit to pray for one another. I said, boy, that's music to my ears. Let's do that. We need it. And as time has gone on, we've discovered, with all the tragedies of life, that we need it. God will get you down, friends. He'll let the devil get you down so he can lift you up higher. If he ain't getting you down, he's not going to lift you up. Humble yourself. I'm quoting the Bible for what it's worth. It's worth a lot. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will lift you up. Humble yourself. God's got his mighty hand on your body, soul, and spirit. Don't fight it. Get down. My boy's got a dog. My boys all have dogs. I love dogs. And this one dog, when he's away, he keeps the dog in a pen right beside the chickens. Got the chickens here, but the chickens can go in and out of the pen and run loose on the place. They're free rangers, and they produce good eggs, as you can imagine, because they're eating a lot of bugs and stuff that God made chickens to eat. Seeds they find on the ground, worms. So you got chickens there. Then the chickens come in and roost in the cane brake right there by the chicken house. They roost in there, up in there, so other critters can't get them. But that's their instinctive habit, of course. They'll do it no matter what. Well, but the dog is locked up, and its pen is right beside the chickens, and right beside the guineas, and right beside the turkeys, right on the other side. So we got the dog pen right in the middle of them, and then so that dog is being there, the coons and the possums and the coyotes and the hey boy, he'll raise Cain, see? Raise Cain, no pun intended. He's right by the cane there, cane brake. And I let that dog out one, of course. And when I let that dog out, that young dog, what he wants to do is run. And boy, he stretches his legs like gangbusters. I mean, running circles like I used to do when I was a boy. We'd run circles around the church house after church down there in the country. All those little kids would be just running around the church. Why? Well, that's what little children do because they got a lot of energy pent up and they feel like they got to stretch their legs. Good for them. That's the way that young dog is. It's grown, but it's still a pup. And just run circles. Boy, at full speed, kicking up the sod. Yeah. But then I say, okay, Pooch, let's go back in. He understands me. And he runs back over to me and throws himself down with his head down, looking up at me and baring his belly in humility. I said, get up now and go inside. I'll pat your belly later, you know. He'll get up and go inside. Well, the way that dog does me, just kind of hang-doggy, as we say, hang-dogging, that's the way God wants us to do him. And if we don't, he'll crush us. You think not? Read the record of what happened to people that didn't. Go to the Bible. We'll talk about some of that as time goes on, Lord willing. Oh, I love to teach the Bible. I love to read it. It helps me just teaching it. I learn more than you do. I learn more than you do. Did you know, to teach the laws of nature and the laws of nature's God, the teacher learns more than the fellows and gals are listening? Oh, you learn a lot, I hope. I learn more. You make me think. Yeah, this is the importance of this. You make me think that I know something, that I've got something to deliver. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So I think, well, maybe I do know something. Maybe I do have something worthwhile to say. Now, whether I do or not, I'll let you be the judge. If you think I do, keep me going. Oh, don't miss this. Keep Miss Francine going. Join with us, partner with us. Pardner, partner. Be our pards. Yeah. With us. Help us get the word out. You can do that in a lot of ways. You can encourage, but you do that with your words, but you can encourage with donations. And we want to send you something always, if you want something, with a donation in appreciation. That's what keeps us going. It encourages the heart. Miss Francine isn't, she has no other way to make money. So donations, free will donations, love gifts, honorariums, we call them. Send them. And God says you have responsibility to do that if you're convinced that I am doing something, and Miss Francine, all those of us here are doing something worthwhile. And God says that he'll bless you. Shaken down, it says in Malachi. He'll not only bless you with much more than you give, it says he'll fill your basket up, it'll run over. He'll shake it down, he'll fill it up more. You ever shake a basket or a sack down with grain in it? We used to do that. I can't, you get it on the scale, burlap bag, and we fill it up with seed, beans, or corn, or whatever it is, and we're cleaning seed, then we'd pull it off and set it down on the scale. You used to have those scales, you know, the scales you used to see everywhere. You'd stand on them and tell you a little bar on it, go up and down. We'd set it on the scale and we'd see how much it weighed. We'd take some seed and put it in it, and a little more. We'd watch it, or we'd take a little out. We wanted to get a perfect bushel in there. You could do that if you had a scale. Yeah. We'd want to get it just right. We'd want to weigh it out for what it was supposed to be. So we knew how much we had. We weren't haphazard about it. We could guess filling up a bushel bag, and they were bushel bags, burlap, and then we'd sew the top. Or, well, we'd do that when we were in town because they had a deal you zip right across the top of it. But we had there's a certain way you grab a burlap bag, and that's what we did. We grabbed the top, we gather the top in one hand, pull down a piece of twine about yay long, pull it down, hold your little finger out. You had to hold your little finger out after you held onto the sack. And then you wrap it around through your little finger. Oh, yeah. Come around again, underneath, over your little finger under, and then pull. And it won't come undone. Did you know that? You know, there's an art to tying a bag. My granddad taught me how. My granddad was a tobacco farmer. And he was really he could just do stuff like that. That's the laws of nature. How do you make a knot? The value of a knot, friends, listen to me. This is the law of nature. The worth of a knot is greater if it's easy and quick to tie, and just as importantly, easy and quick to untie. If a knot is not easy and quick to tie, it's not worth it. If it's not easy to untie, it's not worth it either. That's what increases the value of the way you tie a knot. If a knot jams and you can't get it untied, you'd have to cut it. Well, if you cut it, you just wasted another piece of twine. We were Scotch about that. We didn't want to waste twine, so we didn't cut it. We wanted it easy to tie, easy and fast to tie, easy and fast to untie. And my granddad could do that he'd gather that up, old Mel, he'd whip her around there, tighten her up, and she would not come undone. But to untighten it, well, you had to put your finger under one piece and just pull. But it wouldn't come undone any other way. It was odd the way you tie a sack. But also, he could tie a hand to tobacco. You know, tobacco comes in hands. It's not a precise measurement, but it is precise enough to do the job, and it's sold according to the hand. Or it used to be. I don't know what they do now. Take tobacco, you gather it up in your hand. Whatever a hand is, that's how much. It's amazing. But every hand for every person is going to be just about almost exactly the same. Take a hand, take another tobacco leaf, and there's a certain way to do it. You wrap it around, and then underneath, between the tobacco leaves in the center, pull it up through the other one and pull it tight, and it's tied off with a leaf of tobacco. And it does not come untied. He knew how to do that too. He could do it all very fast. Those are laws of nature. To discover how knots work. When my boys were growing up, little boys, I'm not an expert on knots, but I learned knots in two ways, from two different sources. One was my Uncle John, my granddad Charles Melvin, his brother. We were in the bull business, and Uncle John, Will Henry, John Will Henry, he was an auctioneer. He was the best auctioneer in 3, 4, 5 counties around there. He could keep the rhythm going, he could get the crowd excited, and he could make money. And you got to get the crowd excited if you're an auctioneer. He could do that. But he was the kind of guy that did things nobody else could do. He was good at that. Who else could do that? And talk that rhythm real fast. Miss Francine makes me want to hear that song again. Maybe we can hear it. The Auctioneer. If you think of it, if you got it, let's play it. There's two fellows. The one that wrote the song, he does a good job. But then the fella, I think you might have both clips. The fella that plays the guitar, the old cowboy that sings it, he does a good job too. But I learned how to tie knots riding in a pickup truck with Uncle John, because we were always hauling bulls. We were in the bull business. That means we hauled bulls to people. They'd feed them through the winter, and they'd get a few calves, pay us $5 a calf, honor system. And we always had, Granddad always had piles of ropes on the shotgun side where we'd sit, and as little boys have to put our feet up, and Uncle John would be sitting there with his feet up in the air, all the piles of lariat ropes and halters and fence building pliers and hatchets and all sorts of stuff on the floorboard. And so we drive around real slow down the gravel roads through the countryside, hauling bulls. And Uncle John was a big, lanky kind of fella. His dad was 6'4". My great granddad was 6'4". Uncle John was about 6'2". He's a big fella. My granddad was the runt of 8 children. They called him Runt. But he was lanky like the rest of them, you know. He'd handle those bulls. He always said that handling bulls, 2,000 pounds or more, isn't a matter of force. You're not going to force a bull. No, no. It's a matter of finesse. A matter of, you got to be smarter. As Dad said, boys, you got to be smarter than the animal. He may kick your butt. More than that, he'd crush you. You got to be nimble to handle bulls, boys, I'll tell you. Oh, we tried to be nimble. And you don't take no lip off of them, and there's ways to deal with that too. But coming back to, I'd sit in the pickup truck, my granddad would be driving, Uncle John Will would be sitting over here, lanky as he was, hanging out the window with his big long legs up in the air, you know, right almost in front of my face, because I'm a little kid sitting in the middle with my brother, and one of us is straddling the gear shift, because those pickup trucks had those 4-speed gear shifts down there on the floor, you know. He didn't have anything else to do. He could do things and was interested in doing things nobody else knew how to do. And what he knew how to do was braid rope, and he was good at it, oddly. He just took it up, I guess. And so he'd show us how to put what we call a Honda knot. You could tie a Honda knot in the end of a lariat, or you could braid the rope, undo the end, pull the 3 braids apart, and braid it back into itself, and it would never come undone either. And the tighter you'd pull it, the way he did it, the tighter you'd pull it, the tighter it would come down on those braids, on those individual strands coming back through the rope in a circle, going around it, going down. He showed us how to tie a Honda knot, a bowline knot, how to weave, take the 3 strands of a lariat rope, cut it off at the end, take the 3 strands, weave them together, and then weave them back into the rope coming down, so the crown, it wouldn't fray, and there would be what's called a crown on the end of the lariat, on the bitter end, as the sailor says. Well, I learned some of that from him, just a little boy sitting there, and he took time to stoop down, as it were, and show us little boys, my brother Dave and I, how to do that. When my boys got older, then I said, boys, I want you to, they were little boys, I want you to write a book on how to tie knots. Miss Francine, we ought to include that book on the website. It's great for children, how to tie knots. And Mrs. Brent took the little boys and went through with the boys every knot that I said they ought to learn how to tie, and they actually drew pictures, diagrams of how to tie those knots. Little boys, and she supervised them and, of course, helped them buff it up a little bit. And those boys learned how to tie all sorts of knots and how to splice ropes together. You know, I didn't mention that. Uncle John showed us how to take the 3 strands of 2 lariats, splice them together so you could make a 60-foot lariat out of a 30-foot lariat. Do that. All that's in that book. Oh, we need to do that. I don't want to forget that. Why not make that available to other people? They can use it. We used to sell that book, Miss Francine. Before internet, we sold it in a little catalog we had, other books that we had around the house. And I was surprised. And we sold, by the way, in that book, we have diagrams of how to twirl a lariat. You know, take a loop and twirl it so it stays open, and how to throw a lariat. And that was a bestseller because with that book, we sold a small lariat for little boys that they could use to learn how to do that. Why I didn't think about adapting that to the internet. That was a long time ago when the boys grew up and we shelved all that stuff. I think that young families could use that. That's, again, more of the laws of nature. Well, speaking of the laws of nature, I was going to tell you about, I don't know how I got off on that, but it must have been a worthwhile discussion. Pray that God uses it. 247, Catechism on the Constitution of the United States. Are courts necessary? Are courts necessary? Our Constitution of the United States establishes one court. Our Constitution of the United States establishes how many courts? One. Directly. It directly establishes one court whose will is the Constitution of the United States, whose desires are the Constitution of the United States. It is the desires of the militiamen of the states. That's what it says in the preamble. Never forget the foundation. We, the what? People of the states united, the United States, the several militias of the several states. We, the militiamen, to ordain and establish this Constitution. Well, if the militiamen ordained and established the Constitution of the United States, who has authority to change it, disestablish it, do away with it, whatever? Well, only the militiamen. Why? Because our common law observes of God's creation, and of the Bible. He who has the power to give something is the only one that has the power to rescind it, to take it. He who has the power to give life is the only one that has the power and the authority to take it. And who is that? Who has the power to take life, to direct that life be taken? That too. Who has that authority? The one who gave life, the source of life, the God of all creation is the source of all life. Jesus Christ, the Bible says, in him is the only source of life. Therefore, he has the power to take life, and by the way, he does it all day, every day, all over the world, by the millions. The taking of life is his business. He orchestrates it all, either makes it happen directly and directs it to be happen, or allows it to happen at his direction, or just allows it to happen. It's within his control, and rightly so. We often ask, why why was so-and-so's life taken? People in our own families, tragically taken. Never forget, God's in control of all of it. It's his life. He takes it when he will and when he wants. Well, under that principle, God has given authority to the militiamen of the states of the United States to draft and ratify our Constitution of the United States. They did that. Ordain it. We, the people of the United States, I'm quoting our Constitution of the United States. We, the people of the United States, do ordain and establish this written Constitution. That's not a quote, it just says Constitution. But it is written. They have the power to do that, so they have the power to take it away too, but they have the power through that Constitution. That Constitution establishes one court, and that's the Supreme Court of the United States, period. So who are the establishers of the Supreme Court of the United States? The militiamen of the states. And only the militiamen of the states that are of the states now have the authority to take it away. It is an entrustment, you see. The militiamen of the states, Miss Francine, are you there? Of course you're there. You're always there. Miss Francine, Miss Francine, I'm telling the listeners, is always there with capital letters. There may come a time when she's not in control of that, and I don't want that to happen. We just know God is God. He can do what he wants. But right now, Miss Francine said to me years ago, maybe I want to say this publicly because I want her to know that I didn't forget it. Years ago, when we first began to work together, she says, Brent, I won't work for a guy or with a guy. And she's working with me more than for me. But I won't work with you if you are, I won't use the word she used, because I looked it up and I don't know if she knew that. It had a negative connotation, but it was worse than I thought. I said, okay. And she said, trust is important to me. I didn't forget that either. And she said, as long as we're walking on the same road, and what she meant by that, I take it was, as long as we're headed in the same direction, our heads are headed in the same direction, will be able to work together. Now, I don't know whether she knew this from the Bible, but the Bible says exactly that. It says, how can two men, two women, two persons, a man and a woman, walk together unless they be agreed? They can't. It's impossible. Well, we're agreed at the fundamental level. That's been my discovery with Miss Francine. Does Miss Francine agree with me about everything? I have noticed that I don't think she does. But she's so politic about it and so mild and friendly about her disagreements that I hardly notice, but I do notice. But apparently our heads are still headed in the same direction. I want you to pray that that continues, by the way, because I like to have her around. But she's there, and I want to ask you to do me a favor, Miss Francine. I haven't asked you this before because I try to do it myself, but I'm not able now. I just said a couple of things I don't want to forget, and I will forget them. Number one, I want to get that not book. Will you make a jot a note down about this? That not you did. Oh well, she's always there. And what else did I just say that it was important? I've forgotten it already. Uh, Talking about mhm. Oh, before that, yeah. I don't remember now. That's all right. Here's the deal. I don't forget what is the minutes we're at, and I can go look it up afterward. We're at a certain. So okay, if I start there, I might be able to get it. We, I'll say, let's say 32, just to be safe. If you will do me a favor, jot that down, and maybe I can find out. My mind races when I'm talking, trying to cover things, and I don't remember what it was, but it was important. So important, I don't remember it, but that's what, again, thoughts fly through my head. You hear what they are because I speak them, but I don't have my gun up ready to shoot them down while I'm talking, so I lose them. That's why we try to record them. Sometimes I say something important. Well, oh, maybe it was about, no. Oh, it was about, of course, I was talking about our Constitution only establishes one court. The question in the Catechism was, are courts necessary? I'm just expanding on that and saying it only establishes one court, and that is the Supreme Court of the United States. Therefore, it is the militiaman. Oh, here's what it is, Miss Francine. I don't want to miss this. Will you jot this down? Because I'm writing a book on the subject, and I don't want to miss this. Here it is. Who are the trustees? Who are the trustees? Miss Francine, this is the fundamental of the thing that I don't want to forget. Who are the trustees of this entrustment that God has given to us of this land wherein we live? The trustees are the militiamen of the several states. The militiamen, he has entrusted them with that. Therefore, they have taken a slice of our laws of nature, our common law tradition, as it applies to government, and they have, from our history past, and have written it down in what we call a written constitution. That had never occurred much, never occurred, it doesn't occur much in our common law tradition, but it's good to write it down once in a while. And then, if those fellows, and they're all gone now for a couple of centuries or more, well, not quite, some of them lived quite a long time, but they're gone for many decades. Why is it then, if they're gone, that we have authority? And this is the answer, and I don't want to forget this point, Miss Francine, because we have inherited that trusteeship, man. That's why we have inherited that trusteeship. Does that mean that women have inherited it too? Yes, but in a different role. Mankind, you gals, you have a specific role with men in this process. And as we go through the Bible, I don't want to, of course, I want to be careful not to hobby horse it. I only want to talk about these things as they arise in our discussions. That's why I like to stick to a text like this to kind of keep me moving forward and not hobby horse. But it is of utmost importance in this trust settlement and the trusteeship of the militiamen that the gals understand what God has for them in this trusteeship and how it works. Because if we don't have a critical mass of folk that do that, it will not control the culture. But it doesn't take many of us, my friends, neighbors, and kin, as they say in England. It's kind of funny how they do this. They call each other love, L-O-V, or darling, my darling. Men talking to men do that. No, it's not a faggy thing. It's just an extreme expression of affection, an extreme expression of affection. And I'm not English, well, anymore. I'm American. I suppose I got British, but yeah, I got a lot of British blood in me, but the culture isn't mine in the same way. But we do need to be kind to people. And I say to my darling friends, I'll say that, darling friends, you're special to me because you listen to me. And I want you to know I pray for you. You specifically. I don't know all your names. I just know some of you. Whoever it is that's listening, I have categorized that bunch, and I pray for that bunch because that's the bunch that God has bequeathed to the time here. I don't have the power to know everything, but I know my jurisdiction. Well, Miss Francine, if you'd write down, yes, this is the answer to that question. Do we have authority? Yes, in the under the law of the common law trust settlement, we have authority. We have inherited. We are the successor trustees of that trusteeship that was bequeathed to those men that ratified our Constitution of the United States. Oh, God help us. That's the glue that holds the whole Bible together on all of our existence in our common law tradition. That's the glue, is that trust settlement. And that particular point, the more I look at it, Miss Francine, that's why I wanted to write that down, if you would, please. And I can't, oh yeah, I can't stop and write when I'm talking. I lose, you know how easy it is for me to stop. I'd stop and say, where was I going with this? I don't even know where I am. I'm just talking. Sometimes I'm able to come back, and I want to try to stay on the course. And you folk can help me. By the way, I covet your comments. I read them all. Please comment in the chat. Just relax. Don't say, tell me off. That's not the point. Just relax and talk in the chat to the others. Make comments that you want to make to other people. And I've discovered that if you relax and do that, your thoughts will come out. And that helps me to know what to talk about. If I think there's a misconception, I want to address it. I don't name names, of course. Oh, by the way, this Lutheran gal that said that I hurt her feelings and she's going to pray for me. I want to address that and why it hurt her feelings. And I want to say to her, look, I want to go into great detail about if you're Lutheran, if you're raised Lutheran. The Lutheran Church today, as fundamental as it claims to be, some of them, there are 2 or 3 groups, the Wisconsin Synod, the Missouri Synod. The Missouri Synod is the German branch. The Germanic, more German though, branch of the Lutheran tradition. The Wisconsin branch is Germanic, and that includes also the Scandinavians, but there are those Scandinavian branches. The Finnish Lutheran Church they have their own distinctives, and then the Norwegians. And a lot of the Norwegians are part of the Missouri Synod, but it gets mixed up after a while. Many of them say they're Bible believers, but what they have goes way back to the 1500s. But don't think that you're following the teachings of Martin Luther. Oh, many of them, Luther's Catechism, all that. Yeah, but fundamentally, you've lost it. Why? I'll tell you exactly why and what my understanding is from church history. Martin Luther was the founder, well, not the founder, he was the Reformation's catalyst to what today we call Calvinism. Martin Luther was a Calvinist, but it wasn't called Calvinism because Calvin came along a little later. Martin Luther was, though. Calvinism arose, and if you confine it to the Protestant Reformation, Calvinism arose out of Lutheranism, but made a lot of other changes. But the fundamental is the absolute, unfettered sovereignty of God in all things to the point we can't even explain it. I remember a while ago I said God takes life. He has the right to, and he does it in many different ways. One way is he just does it. Another way is he commands somebody else to do it. He may even command the devil to do it, or as in the book of Job, allow the devil to do it. But in all cases, it's under his absolute allowance and control. He is absolutely and utterly sovereign, and God uses your enemies to not only discipline you sometimes, we see that in the Bible, and then he turns around and destroys them for doing it. That's how sovereign he is. You did evil things to my people. I used you to discipline them, and I disciplined them very hard. Sometimes I took life. Sometimes God takes life because he wants to take his people off the playground, as it were. Oh, yeah. Look, I'm not going to take your salvation and send you to hell, but I'll take you off the playground. I'm tired of you. You don't seem to want to conform, so you're out of here. We had teachers used to do that to us. Well, when we stop and run outside and I ring the bell, you don't even get to go outside for 3 days. Oh boy, I can't go out and play ball. We'd run out there, grab our ball gloves, out in the school ground. We had places wore out in the dirt. There'd be mud holes in the rainy season in the spring and in the winter, but we'd play ball. It's funny. I think about how we played basketball on a gravel surface and when it was cold in the winter and wet and muddy, and we'd bounce the ball. We'd have it all over our hands, limestone, gravel, and mud, and we'd have it all over our shirts, and we didn't care. We'd play basketball. We'd take a crowbar and drag it out to make the boundaries, and the ball hit that. If the ball did hit that, you'd know it. The basketball, if it was out of bounds. We'd play hard. We'd run out, play hard, play ball. We all have ball gloves, Oh, we'd take those ball gloves, we'd get them moving, we'd shape them a certain way. We'd get them wet, and then we'd take a big rock or a heavy weight of some kind, like a weight off an old scale there at the farm, and we'd smash that thing down so it closed like in equal sides on both sides, the same instead of crooked. It was a big deal. Dirt didn't bother us. Teacher didn't. But when she'd ring that bell, we'd run in, or he, Mr. Arnold, he was one of the teachers. Mr. Arnold was a big man. He'd put a whooping on you. He wasn't afraid of anybody. By the time those boys get up around the 8th grade, they get to feeling froggy. Like they could whoop the teacher. My granddad, the one I was telling you about, was in the bull business, and he taught school in these one-room schoolhouses for 27 years. And it was a custom, or in the Wabash Valley anyway, that every year the biggest boy in the 8th grade class would challenge the teacher to a wrestling match. Of course, the teacher, if he was young, it wouldn't hurt him, but Granddad was the runt, remember. I went to church when I was running for Congress. I went to a little church down toward the east of Moonshine, and I got down there, and everywhere I went when I was running for Congress, it seemed like I'd meet somebody that went to school with my granddad. Well, he taught a lot of children, for 27 years. And this great big fella, he was 80 years old or 80 something. He's a great big tall fella, and he said, I was in school when I was in 8th grade, and I was the last year I was in school. Your granddad was our teacher, and that was your granddad's first year. That was 1927. I said, no kidding. Well, see, that's the kind of stuff you draw on when you run for public office. You want to make those kind of connections. Well, they asked me to say a few words at a little country church. It was just south of where we live, not too far, and he'd gone to Frog Pond School. And there was a school just close to us. There was Mariah, or Kickapoo School, and down there by Kickapoo Church. And then there was Frog Pond. It was a big frog, kind of a swampy place on the prairie there. Kickapoo down in the hills and the hollers, but we had two kind of topography around there. We had the hills and the hollers, and we had up on the prairie, and up on the prairie was between the hills and the hollers. And Frog Pond was up on the prairie where the drainage wasn't good, so they called it Frog Pond. That was a pretty well-known school, but the other one was Kickapoo. This fellow had gone to Frog Pond, not Kickapoo. Grandma went to Kickapoo. By the way, I just found out, I was down looking, and the guy that lived next to Kickapoo Church, he just tore that whole church down. It had been there for 175 years. He just tore it down. I wish he'd asked me about it. Why tear it down? Somebody might want to use it. Well, he's a Democrat. I don't know they knew the difference. I don't know why that family is so democratic. Not democratic? Well, yeah, that's what it boils down to. Kind of odd. Kind of odd. Why would you support that? I talked to his neighbor, And he said, I don't support the Democrats anymore. I know that. Well, his granddad and his dad didn't either. He had never paid any attention. Whole family Republicans. How they ever got along with the neighbors down there. Obie McFarland, he was Republican. Dutch was a Democrat. He was right down the road from us, about between a half and a quarter. Dutch, they get in Dutch and his wife Bess, we called her Aunt Bess. She was an Adkins, Atkins. She married Dutch, and of course he was Dutch. That's why everybody called him Dutch. Well, Dutch was a brother to my grandmother's father. See, I had a Dutch. You know, people talk about having a Dutch uncle. I had a Dutch grandmother. He'd vote Democrat. Never could figure it out. He was one of the 2-3 men around us in the communities that wouldn't farm with tractors. They just kept their horses. Had a team of horses, and him and Aunt Bess. We called him Uncle Dutch and Aunt Bess. And, he wasn't a friendly guy. He liked me. Oh, he liked me, and he liked my brother Dave. But he didn't like Dad, didn't like Mom, didn't like Grandpa Mel, didn't like none of them. Always carried a pistol on his hip, always. He always, and anyway, he'd get in the buggy to go down to Cottonwood School house to vote. About from his house, probably Johnson Township, 2 miles down there anyway. And people would laugh because they'd come in, Aunt Bess, the whole family was Republican, and Dutch, he was Democrat, and they'd just get in the buggy and go down there and cancel each other's votes. And we used to say, what's the use? Why don't both of you just not go? You're not doing anything. Oh, I suppose they like people used to like to go places, you know, and dress in nice, take a bath, dress in nice clothes, and go down. It was a kind of like a ritual to vote at one time in America. Did you know that? It wasn't just something you did on the fly. No, you took the whole day off, and you went and voted. Of course, when people were farming, they could take the whole day off. I guess around there where I was, they took the day off. Voting day was the biggest day, one of the biggest days of the year. And Dutch and her go down there and had a Uncle Frank. That was Grandpa Charles Melvin's brother, another brother. There was John Will Henry, and then Frank. They all had simple names. It was Ray, Melvin, Charles Melvin, Charles. They called him Mel. Ray, Mel, Frank, Vernon, John and George. Ray, Mel, Frank, Vernon, John and George, and they came together. You know, about the same age, 2, and then a girl between them. I don't know how that worked out, but that's the way it worked out. And they raised tobacco. So Uncle Frank's going to vote, jumps in the car and driving up to it was at the graveyard. They had a building at the graveyard, the township graveyard, and that was the voting place. So he'd go in there. Of course, people come on the voting day and they put flowers on the veterans' graves and their families, all that kind of stuff. He gets up the crossroads and runs into, they're all tobacco farmers of kind of Southern culture kind of people from Kentucky. So they all voted Democrat. I ran into a friend. I don't know who it was. I need to ask my cousin. His name is Kent. It was always Kent and Brent. We hung out. We were thick as thieves together. Go to church together, went to school together, hung out together, me, and then we had another with a trilogy of us. His name was Jay, and people called him Jaybird. Always together. But he told me his dad ran into a friend. He's Republican. They got to talking about the crops or something, and pretty soon they got all the talking done, and they said, well, where are you going? I'm going to vote. Well, I am too. And one of them said, well, why go to the polling place? We're just going to cancel each other's votes. They said, well, that makes sense. Why waste our time? So they jumped in their cars and drove home. Well, that happens a lot. Well, we're going to get one question done. Are courts necessary? Answer, certainly. Wherever laws are made, there must be some way of determining when they have been disobeyed, and of causing those who disobey them to be punished. This is the use of a court and of a judge. When one person believes that another has broken the laws to his injury or to the injury of the public, he may cause the person to appear before a judge and have it determined by witnesses. Well, That's the only kind of ultimate evidence there is oral. In our common law tradition, we don't trade papers and pleadings only. We do it orally. Why? Because we want the jury and the judge to look at the witnesses, watch their demeanor, notice everything about them. Whether he has broken the laws or not, and if he has, he is forced to suffer such a punishment as the law directs. Now, there are mistakes. He's said things here that aren't true. I call them patriot mythology. They existed back in 1828. You've heard patriots say, well, if there's no injured party, there can be no law broken. That has never been true in our common law tradition, and it won't be true. It won't. There are a lot of laws that can be broken, that a lot of crimes didn't injure anybody, and still they're crimes. This has always been true. It always will be true. I find no matter how often I say that, people just continually come back at me and just talk to me like, well, we all know there has to be a bloody plaintiff, there has to be an injured party, or there isn't a crime, or there isn't a wrong. And that is not true, never has been true, never. If you trespass another man's property, that's actionable and he can sue you. You may not have heard anything. When I was growing up, in the culture where I lived, it was understood among everybody that if you went hunting for coons at night in the woods, you could go any place you wanted. Your dogs were going to run any place, and you had an unwritten right to follow them wherever they treed a coon. Didn't nobody like coons anyway, they said. So, and coons killing chickens, and plus you can get to hide. And I mean, I saw men go out. I went out with men, made back in the late 60s. Well, I'll tell you who it was, that fellow that Uncle Frank, he was the most notorious coon hunter in 17 counties. That's not an exaggeration. He was also champion corn shucker. Champion corn shucker. Had trophies in his house that he wanted to show me when I'd come up. Well, I did this shucking corn. You know, he used to have corn shucking contests. That's where you shucking corn is where you pull the ear of corn off the stalk and throw it in the wagon. There was a science to it, though, and the faster a man could do it, the more valuable he was when it came to shucking corn. Corn shucking time. What you do is bring the wagon, you'd be facing the row, see? You're shucking the corn. There's a wagon behind you, and the sideboard on the outboard side of the wagon is a whole lot higher, this much higher, than the inside board. Why? Because as you're shucking the corn, you pull an ear off, you throw it behind you, it's called the bang board. It hit the bang board and fall in the wagon, see? And you wouldn't even turn around and look. You just know where it is. You throw those ears of corn, bang, 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 they fall in the wagon. And it was the contest was get a bunch of men in the field, and they'd shuck 20 bushels. That's a lot of corn. You know, some of those horse-drawn wagons would hold about 20 bushels. And you'd had a team of horses hooked to the wagon, and those horses, you didn't have to drive them. They knew just to keep even with you. And if they didn't do it, you'd glance around and see them out of the corner of your eye. You'd say, get up, and whoa, and they'd move up and stop. So the competition was all about how trained your horses were, how fast you were, and then once you got the 20 bushels, and you had to get at least 20 bushels. If you got back to the corn crib and you weighed in and you didn't have 20 bushel, it was like falling off the bull when you're riding him before 8 seconds is up. The ride doesn't even count. Well, that's the way it was with corn shucking. You had to have 20 bushels. But the point I wanted to make about Uncle Frank was, I'm bragging on him. He was good. He bragged that he could keep at least 2 ears of corn in the air at all times. Throw them. Now that's fast. It'd take me, I just tried it. I've shucked corn, pull an ear off. You have to know how to grab it, where to slide your fingers under the husk, how to twist it. Your eyes have to be ahead of what you're grabbing and looking for the other ears on the stalk. And while your eyes are on the other ears, while you glance at that one, grab it, look for the next one. And then you're throwing them behind you. I couldn't do that. He did it. That was Uncle Frank. Well, it says here that there has to be an injured party. If you go onto another man's property and don't even know that you're on his land, you're walking, that's actionable. That means he can sue you for trespass and you didn't harm anything. Burglary is a crime. It's the same way. Commission of burglary doesn't require that you steal anything. It's the breaking and entering of the dwelling house of another with intent to commit larceny or felony therein. You break, enter, stick your hand in a window, break that plane with intent to grab something at nighttime, that's burglary. And then you don't do it, no harm done. If you conspire, every crime in America at the national level and at the state level, there's a possibility with every crime that you did not commit the crime proper, but you committed conspiracy to do the crime. No harm done, but you fulfilled the elements of the crime called conspiracy to commit that crime. In some states, that constitutes two separate crimes if you go ahead and do the crime. In some states, if you do conspiracy, if you have a conspiracy to commit the crime and then commit the crime, the two are merged into one crime. It depends upon what state you're in, but nonetheless, every crime that is possible to commit in our country, blame near every one, has the possibility that the prosecutor will, if there's two or more involved, will prosecute you also for conspiracy, even though you never did the crime. Did you know it's always been that way? This is nothing new. Is there any injured party? No. You make plans to kill the President of the United States and miss. You shoot a bullet and miss. You're guilty of what? Attempted murder. Attempted murder is a crime. Nobody's hurt. Let's say, of course, DJ got hit in the ear. Another fellow was murdered. So what's the shooter? Of course, he was killed, they tell us. Who knows? But what was he guilty of? Number one, he was guilty of murder because intention follows the bullet. That's common law. That's common law. He didn't aim to kill the fellow he killed, but he did. So he's guilty of murder of that fellow because the intention to kill the president follows the bullet. He's guilty of murder. He's guilty of attempted murder, to murder the man he murdered. He's guilty of attempted murder to murder the President of the United States. And he can be prosecuted for those crimes. But if he didn't even hit the president, he'd still be guilty of attempted murder against the President of the United States. And if you miss, shoot a bullet and miss trying to kill somebody, and there's no harm. But you're still guilty of a crime. That's why at common law, we say in our common law country, if you're going to shoot at a king, you better not miss. Why? Because you're still guilty of attempted murder. If you're going to try to do the job, you may as well get the job done, even if they prosecute you. You follow me? Let me say it again. No, there are a lot of crimes where there's no injured party and you're still guilty. He says here, when one person believes that another person has broken the laws to his injury. Well, maybe there is no injury. You follow me? Or the injury of the public. That's a crime, injury of the public. How is that? Let's say with the law of God. If any man commits adultery in his mind, he's guilty of what? According to Jesus Christ in the Sermon on the Mountain in Matthew. What's he guilty of? Adultery. That's what Jesus Christ said. That's him, the giver of the law of God, telling you what it means. He's the one that gave it. He has authority to tell you its meaning. He has already committed adultery with her if he wants to. In his heart desire, his will. If he wants to commit adultery with her, he has. He's guilty before God, before the sovereign. You say, well, that's God. That's right. That's right. It is not a crime in the laws of men to want to commit adultery with another woman. You're not prosecutable if you don't do it. That's a different jurisdiction, the jurisdiction God has given us. But as to God, you're guilty and worthy of what, says the Bible? The consequence of the crime of adultery. If you want to murder another man, what are you guilty of? Murder. And you will suffer the consequence of that crime, according to God. But men do not have jurisdiction to prosecute you for murder because they don't know your mind. Well, then how is it that my intent is an important part of every crime? And it is in common law. If you do something that appears to be unlawful and it can be shown by evidence that you had intent to do it, you're guilty of the crime. If it cannot should be shown as intent, you had intent to do it, you're not guilty of conspiracy or the crime. Well, there's a lot to it. I didn't say I was going to untangle it all. I do think that I have it untangled in my mind to a great degree, and I want you to have that to some degree also. But just to make that one point, we went through question 247, Ms. Francine. The only court that our Constitution establishes directly is the Supreme Court of the United States. All other courts under that jurisdiction of the national government, called federal district courts and federal appellate courts, how were those established? Those Congress established those by authority given to that branch of government to establish those courts. Let me repeat it again. It bears repeating. Don't make this complicated. The Supreme Court of the United States, under the Constitution of the United States, is the medium through which the militiamen of the United States established the Supreme Court of the United States, the Congress of the United States, and the President of the United States. Directly there it is. Who has the authority to who established the Supreme Court of the United States? The militiamen of the several states. Who has, through the Constitution, who has authority, therefore, to disestablish and take away the Supreme Court of the United States
thanks.
in its existence? The militiamen of the United States, and they can do that through the process our Constitution gives us to alter or amend the Constitution of the United States. What about the other courts? The other courts, the militiamen of the several states said the other courts, we're going to give that power to the Congress of the United States to establish those other courts. Or if they don't want to, they don't have to. But they have, and they've established them. And by the way, as it has been said, they could get rid of every court of the United States with the stroke of a pen except one. Congress could do that with except one. Congress formed those courts. The Constitution gave them the power to do them. They have the authority to establish those courts. They have the authority to end them. And it's been said recently they ought to go ahead and do that. Well, then, how are we going to go to court? We got 50 states with 50 sophisticated common law court systems. Well, except Louisiana, it's not a common law jurisdiction. We got 50 that have jurisdiction to handle anything that arises, including all of this stuff the Supreme Court of the United States handles in the federal courts. The courts of your state, my friends, the courts of your state have near unlimited jurisdiction. to hear any case about anything. The Supreme Court of the United States and the federal courts under that Congress has established have jurisdiction limited to only what the Constitution mentions. And that's not much. There's a lot of power there, but it's just general stuff. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long.